I'm a man.
All right. What's up? What's up? Took me a few minutes. I apologize for today and the delay. Oh man, I was having a moment talking to the kids about trashing rooms. They, my my littlest one, she's 3. You know how little kids sometimes pick up profanity. You're like, oh man, how did that come up? Well, she brought me. We made grilled cheeses, and her grilled cheese got burned. So she came down to me and I saw I had my downstairs area. I was preparing for all of this, and I saw the grilled cheese plate go flopping down the steps. Do, 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 do. I was like, what in the world just happened? So she came down the steps and she said, Dad, my grilled cheese is old as shit. And I was like, what? What did you just say? She was so determined. I was like, "Don't say that." And she was like, "It's old as shit." I was like, "Oh my god, where did you pick that up from?" Oh, kids, man. Carissa, thanks for that 20 there too. I saw that. The joy of seeing karma taking its revenge on AH and Dan Wooten. Abusers and liars going down. No matter what her unhinged mashed potatoes try to make worse, they're more pathetic. Keep it real, Tug. Love you. Appreciate that. Thank you. And Liz, how you doing, Liz? Thank you for the 5 gifted memberships too. Appreciate that. Now, I want to make something clear when I'm talking about this. Somebody actually messaged me, noted this, and I do think that this is a very good point to bring up. When we're talking about subjects like this, specifically talking about false accusers who want to build a world on accusation alone. It doesn't even have to be false, but it's unproven, untested. I hear people say trust but verify. You need to drop the trust. Just verify. Verify. I mean, that's it, right? When we're dealing with this subject, we're dealing with 2 things that are running into themselves. Number 1, we're dealing with, of course, the accusation culture that we talk about, or listen and believe culture, as it will. We're dealing with somebody that has been mired in that, and that part of it brings on a second part, which I would call lovingly reap the whirlwind. See, for me, I have a stance where I say that things need to be verified. I mean, it's not a difficult thing, right? I mean, it is difficult to verify some things. Some things are, honestly, how do you verify? But at the same time, there needs to be verifications. You don't just villainize and burn people's lives down. When people don't have that stance, though, the way that I look at it is, I'm playing by their principles. I will respect their wishes. They wanted this world. They wanted things where people could have their lives taken just like that. Everything that they work for, it could be snatched away from them at a moment's notice. So again, it's an object lesson. Maybe if you start treating other people with that proverbial hammer, you start hitting them in the career and everything else, then they'll stop looking at everyone else like nails. Once it rolls back around, once they have to pay a price for it, Of course, they'll never learn. Like a Dan Wooten will never stop what they do. Dan Wooten is a glorified tabloidist. I mean, he's not anything but over the last few days. So we've talked about some of the accusations, which I'll throw in there. But interestingly, Dan Wooten has been in the process of heavy damage control on his own, while media, they continue to ignore this situation whatsoever. They will not cover it. And in fact, there's a really weird thing here that's going on too. If you check out the algorithm hits for Wooten and you talk about his allegations, this stuff doesn't go anywhere on certain platforms here. It barely gets anything. It can be on subjects. Like I said, AH is a subject that I know where the baseline is, where that should come in. And Dan Wooten, it's like bringing his name into the mix. It kind of gets a little protection from the algorithm too. So I think these are important things to discuss on that. Noting those considerations, of course. If I don't make that clear enough in videos, I do want to make that very clear. I myself do not believe in this accusation culture. I believe that there are indeed victims out there. There are many of them. They should be respected. They should have a place in society where if justice fails, then people can pressure that system. They could actually bring that to a head and really, push the issue. But the problem is that second attachment, the false allegation portions, because what people have done, they've taken that when you see injustice and you want to react to it, which all of us do, we want to react to, we want, I mean, come on, really? Very few people, unless you're a perpetrator of this kind of stuff, you don't want victims to suffer. You want them to be able to have every consideration. You want them to be able to rebuild. I mean, that's pretty much just base level empathy. But it gets exploited by people. People like Dan Wooten. They exploited it. In fact, there's another article that Dan Wooten did on Amber Heard, which I thought was. Give me a second. See if I can find this real quick. I saw it earlier, and I thought it was interesting because Dan Wooten actually made the statement that Depp was not a victim of cancel culture. He actually was not a victim of it. And I thought that was kind of fascinating considering Wooten himself. He put out an article through the Daily Mail. And let me actually mail this over to myself. I can't pull it up easily through my search engine here, but I pulled it up. And I want to show you the kind of stance that he took when it's not him, just so you understand why, again, that's gotta he gets the same consideration under that. And what I have pulled up in front of you here too, just to make this very clear, Dan Wooten is scrubbing everything. He's removing everything. He's removing mentions of quite a few different items. Give me a second. This has actually been noted by a few people. You have him trending. He's been trending for a few days. There's new stuff with this, including the police consideration that's been reported to it. And again, I'm not his judge and jury, but he should have been, right? Dan Wooten, though, as people have noticed, trending. He's deleting all references to Hugh Edwards on his profile. He hasn't been active for days. He ghosted, and there was this thing where you had oh, he was on vacation at first, right? Oh, he's just away. Yeah. These are people that are active all the time in one way or another. And again, if the story was big enough, Wooten would make sure that he sounded off in some way. He could be he could be stranded on a desert island and still find a phone in his hands. But on this particular subject, neither he nor the places that he's worked for or is currently worked with or the colleagues that he has. You notice all of them, they just tiptoe around it anytime one of them actually has a finger pointed at them. But these people are asking like, hey, GBN News, like, why aren't you covering this? That is kind of strange, isn't it? I mean, considering this would be newsworthy for them, for their quote unquote standards. I hate saying that they have standards, but you know what I mean with that. Let's see. If I robot for a second, I'm opening this poisonous link. All right, so there's a Daily Mail article. I wanna give you just a taste of how Dan Wooten presents this when we're talking, because this, it gives you an idea of, again, how these places work and the mindset, just the total mindset, the total indifference to people that are accused. You see that there. Dan Wooten. Johnny Depp is not a victim of cancel culture. This is an article by him, by the way, just to make this very clear. This is a one for him. He spent years trying to cancel Amber Heard and me. That's what he said there in 2022. This is after everything had come up. This farce of a trial is designed to ruin his ex-wife, but won't erase the damning judgments against him. Again, that headline alone, you just switch out names. Okay, Dan Wooten is not a victim of cancel culture. He spent years trying to cancel, insert any name into that, any accusation that has come up. This farce, we can remove trial. It's designed, when he's responded to anything, it's been designed to ruin whomever, insert name, but that won't erase the damning judgments against him. You see how that works? Like, that's the thing that they like to forget. Dan Wooten not only pioneered the article, see, a lot of people are under the false impression that Dan Wooten only wrote one article. He didn't. He goes back to the trough repeatedly, and he doesn't just cover what's there. He used The Sun, GBN, he's used all these networks, used the Daily Mail, wherever, anywhere he can pop up. He's used that in an endeavor to cancel based on allegation, based on accusation. Again, as I've said before, accusation for these folks, that equals substantiation. The accusation is the evidence. So, with that situation, so let's see what he had to say, though. After dragging my ass through the high court for 2 years, which resulted in a humiliating loss for him and complete vindication for me. Yeah, complete vindication. Rubber stamping accusations. Well, I guess that's how it's going to work, right? I genuinely intend to never talk about Johnny Depp again. Liar. I actually feel sorry for the former Hollywood icon who has become a pathetic excuse for a man. Again, remember, Dan Wooten, when this is stamped at yo ass, you just remember you're reaping that whirlwind, baby, right? A human being with so much, all the money in the world, access to influential people, children who love him, fans who stick with him through literally any form of documented, possibly bad behavior, including abuse of a female partner, has been consumed with an overwhelming and uncontrollable desire for revenge at any cost. Yeah, someone goes out, they try to bury you with something. What do you run into? This. And isn't it amazing, by the way? I see so much judgment in the media over a depth relationship with, say, a Marilyn Manson. Again, a person who has been accused, and I believe much of that is false accusation. I very much believe that. After looking into, I mean, some of these folks are just straight up crazy. Some of them have recanted, by the way. They've 100% recanted. But isn't it just fascinating that someone who has gone in and hired either has made sure to conspire and work with people like Dan Wooten or hires people like the PR manager. You've heard all the accusations against him. Yeah. There's another criminal in the midst too. Like I said, I've been putting that together. That's a slow roll, but it's a fascinating one. But there's another criminal in the midst, an actual bona fide criminal. No fucking accusation. Bona fide, 100% criminal in the mix. No, no accusation. Yeah, 100% grade A. But isn't it funny how that going to not real PR firms, but PR firms that will gut your reputation, going to bona fide criminals to boost you up. Isn't it fascinating how that never so much as gets a whisper? Crazy stuff, isn't it? But ruining his ex-wife, is his goal, no matter how much it costs, how many lives are destroyed, and how much it taints his own reputation forevermore. I mean, the guy, one trial with her, one trial after years, and he has how many interviews that come out talking about, "Oh, I gave all that money away to charity. I did all this stuff. Oh, by the way, look at this op-ed that I wrote. They cost you everything. They cost you tens of millions of dollars." Yeah, one trial plus a trial against an outlet, and that's forevermore trying to destroy somebody. Oh, and again, remember when it rolls back around, when we're talking about this, the reason I go over it is not to rehash an old story, but to remind you again of the world the Dan Wootons want. But after watching the vile court case develop in the US over the past couple of weeks, I feel morally compelled to speak out because a completely incorrect narrative is developing that JD is somehow the victim of cancel culture, a vile trend spreading like a plague through the Western world that I deplore and spent my professional life campaigning against. What a bunch of bullshit, by the way. Let's call it what it is. I mean, you know what? I myself come from a long line of farmers that, amongst other things that they've done, they've dealt with cattle. And you know what? In all my life, I've never seen so much bullshit as this. Seen a lot of cows, but I've never seen this much bullshit. I mean, come on, man. The suggestion is farcical. Given the entire mess is, oh, it's his own making. Remember, if anything, he canceled himself. All right, so he canceled himself now, right? Remember that about Dan. He's not being canceled. When he ultimately, this will be one of his responses. He will either go silent and pretend that it doesn't happen, hoping that basically you have on a long enough timeline, things will just move on and nothing will transpire at all, which that can happen. He will either make some kind of a statement, again, denying certain things. And remember, when he's talking about denial and cancellation, no, that's not it. He canceled himself. Just remember that. Remember it. Or, we get the apology tour and more. I don't see Dan Wooten going down the apology tour rabbit hole, but you never know. I mean, you never know. While I believed it, in April 2018, the now infamous column I wrote, the former newspaper, The Sun, by the way, which is being accused right now of cover-ups that include multiple payoffs because of Dan Wooten's bullying practices behind the scenes. There was apparently an NDA. So you had an NDA the same year that he's referencing that was brought up, which I'll show you again. Keep that in mind. April 2018, same year as the non-disclosure agreements people have been asking about. He wrote an article about that what wasn't supposed to be about JD, he says, but it was about J.K. Rowling's hypocrisy for backing JD over AH while claiming to be a proponent of the Me Too movement. Again, right there, if you're going to call out hypocrisy, you're going to say, man, you got to back the Me Too movement, which again is listen and believe. If you're going to back listen and believe rhetoric, then Dan Wooten needs to cancel himself. Just straight up. Otherwise, hypocrite. Like I said the other day, maybe somebody needs to ask J.K. Rowling what she feels about that since he proposed all that. How do you feel about Dan Wooten? Do you think he should have anything else? I mean, that's how he asked her in an article that trended worldwide, caused a huge freaking court case and everything else. So maybe Turnabout would be fair play with that. But while I believed it to be an important piece of work, it would have soon forgotten. Again, look at the minimization. I didn't ruin this guy. If it wasn't for JD, if he didn't insist on suing for reporting, quote unquote, overwhelming evidence was filed to show JD engaged in DV against his wife, AH. To me, that's indisputable. So he goes on again talking about this. I don't want to read this whole stupid thing there, but you get an idea. You get an idea of how he's putting this article together, how he's trying to say, oh man, that's there. And he brings up, the Washington Post stuff. He brings up, he's suing for that, even though she never mentioned him, the game. That's the game they think they can get away with. That would have been the telegraphed way, the Dan Wooten. So really, Dan Wooten's telling me right now that the stuff that came up, you watch this asshole. He will sue somebody. He will. It'll be fascinating if he tries to sue somebody or he threatens them with an NDA. Just keep an eye out. If an NDA comes up, you let me know if I miss that thing. You let me know. And you let me know about accusations. Like I said, making it very clear, this is reap the whirlwind. It doesn't matter what the accusation, it is part of reap the whirlwind, just making it clear every time it comes up. But he's banking on celebrity justice. Jury, again, you know what the simps they've been doing for the last month, hardcore. They're calling for the abolition of the jury system. It's not fair. We need one person in charge, a person that is part of the establishment, that is part of elitism. They need to make the decision whole-handedly. They want a reflection of what we saw in the UK. One judge, and they wanted, of course, shut down, no cameras, nothing. I mean, it's crazy when you think about that. He says, once again, that's completely against her will. Being forced to give up details of a toxic relationship. But what's worse is what's going on inside the courtroom. Oh, the dep head. So he took aim at you. So, people like this have taken aim at folks like myself, tried to cancel us too. So fuck these people. Anybody that tells you you have to stand with them. And again, this is not aimed at anybody when I say this. I understand. Like these create a conundrum again against what you actually believe versus what you should believe for them. Again, the rules they set, they should have to practice those. But they wanted to cancel you too. If you backed Depp in any way, shape, or form, you like to post. If you have a job, they go after it. And they consider it this kind of stuff right here. What they do, they don't want to. Okay, when I say almost 5 million people sound off on something, that's a lot of people, right? When you think about that individually, you're talking about one of the largest cities in the United States, if we put them out as individuals. That's a lot, right? Well, if you just call them a label, typically, you'll get called a label like a sexist, a misogynist. If you're female, internalized misogyny, whatever, you'll get a label put on you, or dephead. All of that is meant to denigrate, but it's meant to create this nebulous just blob where everyone becomes a singular entity. When I say 5 billion, that's a lot, right? When I say depheads, oh, that doesn't sound that bad, right? What a bunch of monsters, And that's the intent of that. Again, part of cancel culture, but they're not proponents of that, right? What's up, John? Thanks for the 5. Off topic, I know, but I was wondering if you're going to take a look at how awful the new Snow White is. I'm going to check that out. What I want to know, okay, with the Snow White thing, just real quick. I saw the pictures from the Daily Mail. I even posted that on Twitter, asking. I laughed at it, but the actress isn't right in it. So I was wondering, like, what's up with that? Is that truly it? But yeah, if that's actually the new Snow White stuff, oh, that's a mess. We'll talk about that in a minute. But yeah, you are right. So, just one example of the depravity I've experienced. Depp's trolls, that's what you are. Depp's trolls spread the sick lie that I had been arped by a priest at a neighboring school of mine in New Zealand, rendering me as sympathetic to because I'd been damaged by sexual abuse in my own life. When did that happen, by the way? I don't ever remember hearing that at all. In fact, what I always heard about Dan Wooten was Caroline Flack. That's what I heard about. I never heard anything about nothing I've ever heard has been sympathetic toward Dan Wooten. Oh man, well, he has this real life experience that happened. Therefore, I didn't hear that. Maybe, maybe Maybe some rando out there posted. Hell, maybe Dan Wooten posted it himself. Who knows? While he was pretending to be that other name. The first allegations that came out said that he was harassing people under another name. Another name, by the way, that he was using to solicit videos of people. He was also making deals to make videos of colleagues in sexually compromising ways, and he was doing that without their consent. That was part of it. I don't know. Maybe that person was. I'm not sure. I'm sure he deleted any proof of where that was going, if there was any original statement at all. But the Depp head cultists, you're cultists now. Again, you see how this is. This is canceling you. It's not just canceling someone else. So when this asshole is like, I'm not a proponent of cancel culture. I'm just going to cancel every person out there that has anything to say. Man, fuck this dude. Again, he likes the accusation. He'll go so far down that rabbit hole that he'll cancel you for it. Just keep that in mind when we're talking about all of that. Stalk the courtroom. They stalk the courtroom. Did you see any stalking, by the way? The one person I saw that was out of line in the courtroom was Eve Barlow. Eve Barlow was ejected from the courtroom because she got Gina Duders, all of that. Again, people will be like, no, it was because of texting. How did that happen, by the way? Are we just going to leave out how we got there, what she was being called out for, why the hearing was there? And then they found some kind of a good reason to keep people like Rottenborn out of there. See, if the judge booted you on false evidence, I don't know how that reflects on a judge. So, just circumventing that a bit. And again, this is no flack toward the judge. I'm just saying, you find another reason to kick somebody out, a lot easier. You don't have the messy details of, well, there was this other thing too. And again, that's no flack on the judge. I'm just saying it comes to a much better conclusion or head. But says, they issue regular death threats. Again, this weird narrative. I'm not saying that people don't make threats online. But any asshole can create a random account and threaten people. I can't even begin to tell you how many threats I've gotten from weirdos out there. And I would not put it past those weirdos to create freaking accounts where they themselves issue threats and pretend, oh, look at this. I wouldn't put it past, well, I'm not going to say that, but yeah, where I might be going with that. But anyway, have seen the Aquaman actress forced into increasing her personal security. I always hate that statement too. So everything that happens with AH is bad. Everything that she did that, again, if you accuse somebody of the worst shit ever for years, the man has a security team, which he was insulted for repeatedly in the media, by the way, because they were talking about how that was a reflection of his entitlement. I kid you not, that was one of the narratives that I saw. Talk about entitlement and out of touch. But you saw, why would you need it? First of all, one of the biggest names out there. You'd need it anyway. But on top of that, all of the craziness and stuff, well, just overlook that. And I mean, really, he needed a security team to keep Amber Heard from hurting him, too. In some of those times, you heard some of those stories. It didn't work because, you called them off some. But that tells you. Anyway, so the trial has been isolation for her. Every facial expression, word, or choice is analyzed compared to him. His court appearance is a rock concert where he's greeted by giddy fans. Everyone's a fan, right? Twitter, TikTok. They've used the social media, especially Twitter and TikTok, to brand her as crazy. A sentiment they have helped make acceptable. Again, at this time too, and look at this. They quoted Eve Barlow. Eve Barlow, who got her ass booted out of the freaking trial. He even quoted her because he is in the camp with Amber Heard. He is in communication with their jacked up PR team. I mean, again, not a proponent of cancel culture. Oh, it's much worse. I wonder how much Dan gained from canceling other people. See, that's a question too. When you think about this, it's not just a question of whether or not someone cancels, but they cancel people for profit. That became part of his. One second, I gotta grab something. My phone's dying. I won't be able to see you in a minute. I gotta grab this. Give me one second. I'm coming right back. I'm not. I'm not leaving. I had to grab a cord or the phone will die, and I can't see you lovely chat otherwise. Sorry about that. I'm getting back. I'm coming back. But E. Barlow told him during Depp's disastrous libel trial in the UK. I always like doing during the. I like the announcer's stupid voice. The world learned. He promised global humiliation for AH. Fuck yeah, you accuse. I'll make this clear. You accuse me of something terrible. You try to destroy my life. You falsely accuse me of something. I'm not supposed to say I want to globally humiliate and ruin you. Oh, fuck all that. Nicety toward a false accuser. I don't even get that idea. I don't get that at all. And remember that, though. He can't try to ruin any accuser. I mean, when that guy, you know what his response to a person that said that he was guilty of driving Caroline Flack to the end, that called him a predator and more. You know what his accusation, I mean, his response to it was going to the police, having that person labeled a stalker because he said, oh, these are threats. That's not freedom of speech. That's not a reaction to the issue. That person got 4 months because, oh man, he backs the ability to talk about this stuff. He's totally not for canceling people. He's totally not for humiliating and putting people in fucking prison if it's pointed at him. It's fascinating how that works, isn't it? You can keep all of that in mind. 4 months for somebody who accuses him. But saying that you want to globally humiliate somebody that's trying to ruin you, oh yeah. And you know what? The end of relationships, period, are oftentimes ugly. Unfortunately, cooler heads do not prevail. It is just the way that is. And if we typically, that's one thing I don't like about when divorce comes up. If it's just a divorce between A and B, the court systems, you can make all types of accusations and have to be true. And if those things end up in the press, that's when the public gets involved. But yeah, I mean, I'd say a lot worse. But not only does media bias continue to favor Depp, I mean, this is just unreal. He's like, oh, it's media bias, and they favor him. I mean, you got places out there writing "men always win" and all this other garbage, but it's biased toward him, right? And that's fascinating again, considering nobody's you have small outlets that are talking about what's going on with Dan Wooten, but the outlets that are talking about that, they're none of the large outlets. Why? Because they're totally imbalanced in favor of Dan Wooten. I mean, we need to change that system. He said it with Johnny Depp. All right, let's get to it. Dan, you can be the first example of how this goes by reporting and canceling your fucking self. You do it. You do it. You are that institution, Dan. You are. So you go in, you report, you don't answer, by the way. You don't answer the accusations. You report on them because it is totally imbalanced. That's an imperfect system. Accusation matters, baby. I'm sure he'll agree with me there too, right? Of course. Uh, with notable omissions from press coverage about very damning pieces of evidence against him. Social media landscape is shockingly brutal for AH, with TikTok and Twitter especially becoming insensitive and oversimplifying platforms prone to spreading disinformation and misogynist hate. Yeah, again, Dan Wooten, he's been accused, and in order to counter all that misogynistic hate, we just need to have everybody pick up on that. And again, one of the problems, a problem with accusations against somebody like Dan Wooten, if they're founded in reality, not only is he a very powerful elite, but on top of that, his victims are male, and that system doesn't care. They don't care about male victims. They don't care about kids. Honestly, they don't care about women either, just to be honest, but they at least play the game like they do care until it's inconvenient, of course. If it's inconvenient, they never care, but they pretend to care, and like I said, unless it's one of the journos, a big name journo or something. Essentially, if it's bad for the bottom line, uh-uh. But the live broadcast of this trial is deeply dehumanizing. Hum Humanizing. Well, I couldn't say it for a minute. Deeply dehumanizing. I said dehumanizing. I was like, "What did you?" Sorry, I had to stop myself for a minute. I was like, "Where did that come from?" It has resulted in the occasional nitpicking over a wardrobe, facial expressions, disproportionate criticism. While Deb, oh, he smiles, doodles, laughing. Oh God, he laughed. Oh, you got to be kidding me. He doodled too. And we knew all about that. What they were telling you essentially, though, is people like Dan Wooten, they need to be the arbiter of so-called truth. They need to be the one that tells you everything. And they go on from here. I mean, you can see how all of that comes up, you know? You can see how and it ends with, he tried to cancel me. Dan Wooten, he actually tried to cancel me. Because I called him terrible fucking things, and I said not only did he call it, see, here's the lie that is perpetrated with the, UK trial. The UK trial was not about necessarily being called a wife beater. The UK trial was about pressing JK Rowling for a reaction, wanting her to get Depp fired. Basically, demanding 5 answers from her or else. They timed it with the release of a movie. That is cancel culture. That is absolutely 100% what that is meant for. It wasn't meant to report a story. There wasn't reporting of him believing accusations or anything else. It was him saying, "Hey, why haven't you fired this guy?" That was 100% the reason. But he was like, "Shame on him." Okay. So meanwhile, you've had reports now, and there are multiple reports of this, by the way, that have been talking about how Dan Wooten, he has been under investigation from the police for about a year and a half. Now, some of the timelines talking about that too, they go even further. And the accusations, again, I'm gonna fill in the newest one. I talked about this some on, and again, this is an accusation. Like I said, you can't substantiation is there, no, but that doesn't matter, does it? I mean, that's the way I understood this thing. One second, I'm lining these up. And it wasn't about substantiation. It was just about Heard presented some things to Dan Wooten, and Dan Wooten said, "Yeah, that's factual." That's all it took. So here's accusation about Dan Wooten. This is one of the newer ones, and it includes them talking about how they went to the police, how they went through that system. So listen to this here. This is one. Let's just go over this, okay? Let me get a Coke real quick. I haven't had a Coke. By the way, so I told everybody I'm trying to get in better shape. A shape that's not round, and over the last 4 days, so 4 days, I've had an app that tracks my workouts, not all day long, just workout walking. And during those days, I've walked 22 and a half miles. I was like, heck yeah, man. I dropped a pant size, getting in shape, baby. Next year, we're gonna do some meet and greets. We're gonna have fun. I've been props to people like Camelot, by the way. Cecil says those guys are, and a lot of you folks too. But props to them. Like they're always supportive and answer questions and stuff. Here's something. Let me note something before I go with this. Here's something that I never talked about. I've never mentioned this before at all. Okay, one of the things that why this is important with myself is a few years back, I had, let's just say, an incident that it damaged my knee, my side, and there's not scarring or really anything. But because of that, I considered having a permanent disability. I have a placard and everything else. So I was told by doctors that I would never walk without a limp. And sometimes I have problems with that. I'm like, "Oh my god, man, this is rough." So drilling out 22 miles, again, I pace them correctly so I don't damage anything, but, yeah, I mean, that's boom. Again, it's not just going out, but it's overcoming hurdles that I was told I would not overcome. So I've been particularly proud of that. So when I mention every day, "Yo, I walked 4 miles this morning. I did 10,000 steps." I mention that because it's not just about working out. It's about proving, all of this. Like, "Hey, just lay down and die, as it were." No, no, no. Maybe not. Maybe not. But anyway, so let's read this together. I know that was a little off topic, but still, I think that's a I think that's an important thing to note. Especially with media. The same people like, the Dan Wootons of the world, when they're telling you getting fitness is actually, it makes you racist. You're somehow part of a right-wing conspiracy. Yeah, no, that's really nuts. So, again, he's not the one who made that, but he's part of that system. So screw them all. But anyway, let's continue here. So it's an accusation against Dan Wooten, a new one. Sunday, the 9th of November, 2014, is a date that changed my life forever. This was the date I attended the MTV Music Awards in Glasgow. It's an evening that should have had forever lasting great memories of a really enjoyable night, but that was not to be. That was the night I met Dan Wooten. That was the night he first met the person he already knew, myself. Now, they make this clear. What they mean there is they met him for the first time. They didn't have any background there, but Dan Wooten already knew everything about them. So at that point in my life, I was working as an escort. Now, they make this clear. They were not engaging Dan Wooten in any exchange of money or anything like that. So what they're bringing this up because they say this and another factor makes them easy to blackmail, easy as a target, and they're alleging that Dan Wooten targeted them because they figured that they would not speak up about this stuff. And they say, yeah, they were 100% right about that, by the way. And I missed somebody's member chat. I apologize. I didn't catch it right when it came up and it left. John, thanks for the 5. Apparently, ring door cameras have been declared racist now too because of reasons. Yeah, it's because they catch a lot of evidence of criminal aspects, and I'm not saying that that has anything to do with race. A lot of times that's socioeconomic, but yeah, apparently them or that Amazon story. Jeez, I mean everything essentially. It's just an easy, sloppy way for people to write headlines because they're horrible. But at that point in my life, I was working as an escort, something I genuinely had to do at that moment in time to survive. And the agony of that, having to disclose this, is incredibly painful because I know exactly how that is viewed by certain judgmental people out there. This can easily be seen as a quick way to try and instantly discredit someone. Now, you'll notice I took out certain words here. You know, this man, this dangerous man, drugged and aggressively, I'm going to say, arped me in the most degrading way possible, or in the most degrading way, rather, calling me a worthless, nameless piece of, yeah. I want to make it clear that Dan came to my hotel room and used his knowledge to gain entry into my room. Dan knew a lot about me on this chance encounter. We had never met before that night, although he had very briefly seen me in the lift going up to my room hours before. He had done his homework on all well established escorts at the time, which was very clear to me in the conversation that took place. I would like to have some more on that conversation, by the way, just to say, because it fills out. Allegations, again, you can't substantiate allegations. One of the things you can notice in some allegations, though, there are there are moments that will make something seem more credible. Again, it does not make it credible, but it makes it seem more credible. There are certain items that come up in that, and also on the other side that just basically wash them away. So, you know, and again, I could see how, honestly, putting out there too, that would I mean, we look at this from an observational standpoint. We don't, we're not looking at it through the person that's putting it out there because, if these things are indeed true, whew, man, you're talking about some horrible things that you're having to bring back up after years. So this was not a booking. There's no exchange of money. I made it clear to Dan that I was on a personal night out. I was not here to do that. So he knew things about my past, one second, some of the information. I'm blowing this up. Just give me a second. There's 4 pages like this. The information was in the public domain. Some of the details were not. Some of it was said by him was so specific and related to one thing that it showed me that this man had researched me deeply. Now, there have been allegations that mirror stuff like that too, of him bullying, of him going out, again, finding socially viable or acceptable targets. Again, those are allegations, but again, the world he wanted, it's a world he's not being canceled. Remember cancel culture? No, no, no. If he says anything about it, in fact, that's just him, trying to cancel the other person. Any better, with him wanting to use, he's talked about the litigiousness of other people. I always find it fascinating that the same people that do that or insult them when they go to law enforcement, they're the first people to do that themselves, aren't they? Always. I mean, it seems like it always happens. What's up, Jen, by the way? Thank you. 10 gifted memberships. Bam. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Love watching them fall in while I'm talking. So they note their background. In addition to being an escort, they were convicted of extortion back in 2010. Now, there's a reason they bring this up. They're going to note, but this to fill that in, the details of which have never been fully exposed or explored to any great extent because of all who were involved. But there are plenty of diluted news articles, rather, out there regarding this and videos of me discussing it online. It was a set of complex circumstances. All of this transpired when I was 15 years old, who ran away from care, which continued until I was 19. What I ask people to do is bear in mind that I was already in a constant situation in my life where I was being exploited and accosted by a different accoster. Again, you notice I switched the A word. A man who was the very one who introduced me to all this activity. I identify this man as my serial accoster because this was the person who had accosted me for the most prolonged period of my life. Now, the reason that I mention all of this is because it is entirely relevant to what Dan and I were talking about that night. And most importantly, I was threatened by an unknown individual the next day by someone clearly working on the behalf of Dan, who called me to make it clear to me that I better never speak out on what happened to me. And again, there are multiple allegations that mirror this exact same type of allegation. You have somebody unknown calling up people saying, "Hey, you better not make any statement about this at all." That's if that is indeed a reality that actually ends up being verified in any way, that's scary because you're not just talking about somebody who is willing to do their research to find this kind of stuff, when you lay it down, serial accoster, let's say, this is the same kind of stuff. Like, this is the movie format of what you look at with people going in and picking up information about people, so they can do very terrible things. We have many crime shows that reflect that. So these allegations, and again, they are allegations, but they've come up repeatedly about him using tactics like that, which is, like I said, if any of them ever bear out, that's crazy. And Dan, like I've said before, he believes in the world where accusation wins out. So I guess this is just looking at a guilty plea, I suppose. Man, what's up, AJ Stone? Another 10 gifted memberships. Dang, thank you for that too. Appreciate that. Like I said, I appreciate people. These are subjects that they are not they're not algorithm friendly. They this kind of stuff, it's easy to go out and talk about companies and things, and talk about like a shitty movie or this or that, or financial woes behind a movie. But when you get into allegations, like not only is it it's a lot of guesswork. You never know. I think that Wooten, again, if you look up people talking about him, most of that conversation, it goes nowhere. It gets buried in algorithms. So again, appreciate that. And I hope people, again, they bring this stuff up, but always clarify. Again, as a proponent of canceling other people, it's why don't they live up to the standard they wanted? So there's no doubt in my mind that Dan viewed me as fair game target that night and saw me as prey because of all that's mentioned. An accosted young adult with a deeply troubled past through the care system who went on to get a criminal record, ended up in prison. And by that, one second, point, I would agree with this, by the way. By that point in the escort industry, they would be the perfect candidate for a certain type of predator. They would be. I mean, that would be 100% legit because by its own nature, that industry is easily considered, disreputable. You can go out, you can you can destroy allegations that come from it. That's why serial killers prey on prostitutes. They prey on sex workers because they go unnoticed. That's why other type of serial abusers, they would I mean, they are societally, they are the perfect target for people like that. I was just seen as somebody easily dismissible. No one would believe me, and most importantly, he made sure that I got message through the threatening call. Now, I reported all of this. Again, this is another person. There have been multiple people that have said the same thing, by the way. I reported all of this to the police. This person is saying, yeah, I reported this in 2021. I talked to the police about that, and still absolutely nothing has ever been done about it. Now, what could be done about it? That's a good question. This is where you run into it. But what really needs to happen in this, there needs to be a concerted effort to find out whether or not the son was paying off people to keep them silent behind the scenes. If they were paying off people, not because Dan is an asshole. If Dan is an asshole alone and they were just like, that's a different conversation. Dan strikes me as somebody that would be terrible to work with. I mean, just at a surface glance level, he looks like he would be a horrible person to work with. If he's created a work environment of bullying and browbeating, again, that's something to call out, but that is not the thing that we're discussing. That is a totally different beast. And really, that's not to minimize that, but my God, these are life ruination items. What's up, Charlie's London? Hey, what's up, Charlie's London? How you doing? We got I need to stream my life. I've been following this story. Please don't private it. I haven't. There's another one from. So the last one that I did covered the intro allegations, but I'll bring them up toward the end of this too. Okay, it's late. Go to bed. Catch the rest tomorrow. That's cool. By the way, check out Charlie's London, creator of quite a few great projects. So I like them. Good person too. I love that's one thing about that whole comic skate scene. All of that, great people, lots of people that are there that make all kinds of great stuff. But on Dan Wooten again, 2021 reported nothing got back. I've been silenced before. discredited, disregarded, never giving a real opportunity to set the record straight about any of the numerous things that have happened to me. So you eventually just start to give up, and that's the place I now reside. Since I've reopened Pandora's box, I've hit the deepest, hardest depression I've ever felt in my entire life. I wrestled so much about going public and putting this out there about what Dan did to me, but I cannot stay silent anymore. Waiting for someone or something to happen that would contribute to justice being served is a hopeless mindset I've made. Now, one of the problems with this mindset here, I want to caution you. If you do go through something, yes, you need to be able to verify depending on where you live, because you will be sued for statements, and whether you consider that just or unjust, as an onlooker with it, that's just the reality of it. So, when you have encounters, if somebody comes like in this day and age, if you have the ability to document something horrible, if something's happened afterwards, if you're making police reports, again, they're talking about making real police reports 7 years after the fact. And I'm not, like I said, when I say this, I want to make it clear too. That's not judgment on somebody in the moment not being able to document something, but the only way that you are going to truly ever see justice is to be able to provide something that's verifiable. I've made many mistakes in my life. I've been met with the consequences of these mistakes. It's about time that the people who actually did me wrong were held responsible as well. Or at the very least, the information is widely known. The overall message I want people to take away when reading this: I will not be held hostage by what Dan Wooten did to me or my past that he blatantly used against me to keep this buried. I just want the truth out there once and for all. This is not some kind of a tell all. My life is deeply complex. The details covered here are important for people to know so they can understand some of the context and how this complete spider web around me has had me debilitated for so long. Finally, I am telling it exactly like it is. This is a firsthand account. It's my words. I just refuse to make this Acoster secrets my secrets. I am sick and tired of disgusting individuals getting away with doing the most evil acts, and they are celebrated. This man is an arpist, and my memory is his crime scene. I was there. It happened to me. I know the full impact they had. I pray that everyone who has been hurt by this vicious, vile man eventually find some kind of healing. Writing this was beyond painful. Now, as far as this tell all here, again, to tell you what kind of damage can actually occur from something like this, give me 1 second. I had something open here. I don't want this open. Give me 1 minute. I had another search engine try to open up. So now, as far as that accusation is concerned, let me reload this just to see. That has gotten 4 million views so far. 4 million hits on it. So the reason that I bring that up is because this is just one post that has been embedded 4 million times. So it is highly visible. This stuff has trended repeatedly. You can see other people have captured that, but I mean, it has come up time and again. You can look at people's posts just to see Dan Wooten, and he's not just trending like you see Grimes here, for example. Okay, Grimes, 5,000 tweets on Grimes for this trending, right? Well, when you look at Dan Wooten, you're talking about 30, 40, 50,000 posts or more. They're all talking about Dan Wooten. So, when that comes up, the reason that that's relevant is because, I mean, Dan Wooten, he has the ability to help make this story go away. And this versus the reflection that was in the media. So when all of this came up in its first couple of days, I want to show you how this looks, by the way, just to show you how the reporting or lack thereof, how that is actually being considered. If you looked into the media and you looked up Dan Wooten's name, now again, you can go deeper dive and actually look into his name from stuff. But if you do a surface level search, this is what it looked like for me. I just straight up screenshot the first items that came up. Again, you'll notice all of the discussions about him, they're old. There was nothing new whatsoever that would hit on his name specifically because the outlets that were actually and this was a Google search. Now again, there are small outlets that have been hitting on this recently. But the outlets that are, the outlets that would usually get big traffic on accusations, they're directly involved in the allegations. So that's a problem for them. It's a big problem for them. Their names are directly attached. Again, if your name is directly attached to it, yeah, you got a problem. Now, on top of that, you had this. Now, this was part of how all of this broke. And after this, again, I did a really long read through. I'm not going to attach this to this portion of it, but in the last live stream, I did a lengthy read through. I'll give you the high points on something, but you had a self-reported ex of Dan Wooten come out and make some very serious allegations. They essentially said that Dan Wooten, while they were watching his home, they looked behind the washing machine and they found a carryall with a lock on it. When they got into it, there was a tape of somebody. Obviously, it was hidden tape. They were saying, it looked like it had been made without this person's consent. They were a Sun employee, and there was a transcript. But the transcript there was between somebody and a name that they said was actually Dan Wooten. He used another name. That name, they said, came up again and again. Came up through threats, blackmail, extortion. So they made some very serious allegations against Dan Wooten. And again, these are the same outlets. They would cover anybody they consider newsworthy, sitting down, eating a slice of bread, and they spent a lot of time burying Depp. They spent a lot of time. And they spent a lot of time backing Amber Heard and this idea that accusation rules out. So again, you don't just have Dan Wooten hiding something. You have complicity, and then you have this, which alleges even worse complicity. Man, AJ Stone, thank you for an additional 10 gifted memberships. By the way, that's crazy. Thank you. That's an insane amount of gifted memberships. I love, like I said, watching them fall in. That's cool. There, memberships are. I think memberships are just cool because it kind of creates this community dynamic. I like that. So thank you. So here in the first set of allegations, and you also had statements like this too. Dan Wooten will soon be exposed for his depraved abuse and harassment of minors. Harassment of minors. That's a serious allegation that goes even further than what we're talking about, I mean, if you find out, I wondered, like, what scenario would you have the harassment of minors? And if you combine them with other, again, this is just total speculation about what could come up. You've seen this thing about going in for escorts. I wonder what kind of allegation, because there's this allegation of him harassing young male members of staff, but that would not, unless they have somebody again that is a minor somehow, that's typically it's typically not what happens unless you're talking about like staff members delivering papers, or I mean, maybe they have an intern doing something. But I don't know. I would love more clarification on how that's supposed to go. But this came up from the eye. The eye was essentially asking about another person. And I thought this was fascinating just to see how the Daily Mail reacts to questioning any employee, questioning any of these situations when they're in house for places like the Daily Mail. So last year, rather, a senior journalist on the Daily Mail was sacked after internal investigation concluded that there was certain types of activity with a junior trainee whom he was supposed to be mentoring, and that was inappropriate. When the Eye asked questions about this, we received a response from the paper's legal editor telling us that the matter was confidential and it would be deeply unfair if we were to print anything on the subject. So it's deeply unfair to go down that rabbit hole. But again, places like the Daily Mail, yeah, fascinating, isn't it, when the tables are turned? Now, the pontificating of one particular pundit, however, has left former colleagues gobsmacked. Given his own, did you? So we talked about that word, by the way, the other day in a live stream, and I tried working that into a conversation. People looked at me again. I'm in the U.S. South here, so that's not a word we ever hear. So I thought I like that word, so I tried working it in. People looked at me like, "What the hell?" But it's nice. I like it. I might attach it a little bit more. Given his own past propensity for harassing certain type of harassment, younger male members of staff who worked for him, both inside and outside of the office. So they're saying, these are these aren't coworkers, these are subordinates. That's the allegation to it. And when you have allegations, coworkers bad enough. When you're dealing with coworkers, you may have that power dynamic it may skew to a certain level, or it may very unfavorably skew. But when you're talking about people that, like, if you're their senior at somebody, if you have the ability to fire them, the implied or else, that's the problem with the power dynamic. When people talk about the unexpressed power dynamic, that is the problem in a nutshell. The or else, the implied or unspoken, because there is a threat of retaliation. That's what HR is supposed to be there for. In some companies, that's exactly what it is there for. But always remember, HR companies, especially for, I wouldn't trust the Sun's HR company or the Daily Mail as far as I could kick it anyway. I mean, God, you never know what you're dealing with anyhow. But beyond that, a lot of them are just there to protect the company. What's up, Johnny's girl? Thanks for 20 months there. Well, hey there. Well, hey there, return, by the way. Thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here, by the way. So, members of HR, speaking of them, this is why I brought them up. Department at his former employer openly admitted protecting him during investigations into his behavior. This happens a lot, by the way. This is what we have laws against that. We have laws against retaliation. We have laws against against retaliation of whistleblowers, report all types of things. We have all types of protections, but they mean two things in a lot of situations. They mean fuck all if a place can bury it. Because a lot of these, like they noted here, a legal director from the Daily Mail contacted them. Most people can't fight back against one of these giant corporations. So, I mean, if you want to go in and you want to sue, they will drag you through it. Warner, they have one lady that's been suing them for over a decade, man. They just delay and delay and delay. They try to financially browbeat you, drive you into to never being able to recover, hoping that you'll age out at the end of the day. Either you'll go broke or you'll age out. But at least one of which resulted in an employee being moved to another department to avoid his boss's attentions. Now, you notice how that's worded. The last time that I read that, I didn't read that well enough because the allegation in that isn't because of bullying. The allegation is to avoid the attention of the person, the unwanted harassment. And again, if HR, their answer isn't to do something about it, but rather to move you to another place. That's pretty jacked up. But again, when you're talking about people that are very powerful, I mean, you can get stuff like that. And also, they say that there's a number of bullying complaints against the same man resulted in staff leaving with payouts. Now, here's an important factor too. And one of the reasons that I went over that specific article with cancellation, because I wanted to make this very clear. You notice the time frame on these NDAs that they're mentioning here. They said the I asked if these also involved non-disclosure agreements in 2018. Remember the article Dan Wooten wrote? He said 2018. So behind the scenes, there are allegations while he is penning attack articles trying to destroy another man's reputation, trying to destroy them on accusation alone. There are allegations that the company that he was working for, that he was pinning this for, was having people sign non-disclosure agreements, trying to hide these very things going on. And the spokesperson for that company said, well, I'm afraid we're going to have to decline to comment. And of course, they're going to take that. They're going to take that anyway. It is interesting, though. If there was nothing there whatsoever, you would figure there'd be a denial, right? That doesn't exist. This is just conspiracy, right? But that's not what it says. It actually says, well, we're gonna have to not comment on those particular NDAs or those alleged NDAs. That's fascinating, right? John, thanks for the 5. HR moves employees, Catholic Church moves priests. Indeed, indeed. And that all of these, any institution, when we have institutional abuse, there needs to be a call out for it. It does. It needs to be. And again, when I'm talking about this, I feel like I'm making this clear. Like I said, somebody rightly pointed out, we were discussing this, the whole idea, something we have hammered home again and again, is that listen and believe is broken. That verification of something, it has to exist. But on the other side of that, like I said, attached to it are the people that created the very institutions that destroy or cancel people. They created the social landscape. That is an institution they have created. The institution of cancel culture. Those people, they say that they believe in allegation or accusation being the evidence. And when they believe in that, you have to hold them to it. You put their feet to the proverbial fire. I mean, there are some crazy ones out there too. And you've had, small outlets that have indeed, they've reported things. And you also, so a lot of people have been bringing up the stuff that happened with Flack, the statements that again ended up getting somebody jailed. A person ended up going to jail for harassment of Dan Wooten because they were calling him a predator and more. This was their statement there. How it changes, right? It's my firm belief that the news will eventually see the light of day where Dan Wooten is outed as the predatory male he is, and so many rumors claim it because I suspect it'll come out soon. I want to know. I want to be the one that gave you the exclusive on it. Everyone knows it, Dan. They're all just too scared to say it because of what you will say about them. Huh. That really does sound like reflective of reality. If there was a scenario where Dan Wooten was outed, He controls the microphone. He is an arbiter of quote unquote truth. What people would be afraid of that person, right? Interesting, right? Well, they say the most dangerous creation in the world is a man who has nothing to lose. I have nothing to lose, Dan. So bring your lawyers and your threats and see how much you get. And they got, by the way, this person jailed for 4 months. They did. They ended up because he was convicted of harassment. I tell you, with all of this coming up, there's been a lot of people that have been saying, hey, maybe some people need to go and revisit that decision, huh? I don't know. Like I said, it's just fascinating. Hey, Tan, by the way, thanks for the 10. I'm going through some crap right now, but I'm here lurking, listening, and making a toast to karma. Hi to all there. Well, I hope whatever you're going through, when you're going through hardship, taking a moment, removing your mind from it. It's hard to remove your mind from that, but diverting it somewhere. And again, if you need people to talk to, there's plenty of people to talk to. And remember, if it's something that requires a professional, talk to a professional. And much love to you. So I have nothing to lose. Bring your lawyers and your threats, see how much you get. I may be poor in possessions and wealth that you can try to take, but I'm rich in so many things. Life-changing memories, amazing family, the best friends that love me for me. I have a mind filled with the craziest stories and the best experiences, and nothing but love in my heart left to give. You can't take any of that away from me, Brand. Looks like it's destination bankrupt for me. Dan is a sex predator. This is what they allege then, who uses his power to try and get what he wants. It doesn't care who he hurts. There, I said it. You should be fired, Dan, from all your ventures with immediate effect, with no compensation, and your voice should be taken away forever. Huh. Now that's fascinating. Considering again, Danny Boy, he had allegations coming up even then. There were the allegations that he had driven somebody to their end. And that stuff, that got some coverage at the moment, but not really. It got a lot of noise in places like Twitter. But the thing is, Twitter and social media are its own thing. But the people who you'll notice the lawmakers and the people who make the decisions, yeah, they're mostly if they're on social media, they're probably on Facebook. No, again, if this is you, it's no offense meant to you whatsoever. But honestly, I saw a trial one time where somebody was saying that posting stuff like this or reposting, making comments, that was kind of like them reposting pictures of people's kittens. And I was like, no, they're not the same. Yeah, they're not the same at all. So it just gives you an idea of how that doesn't touch on the real world. Twitter is not the real world. It can impact the real world, but the way that it impacts the real world, there's a filtration system to the real world. That's one of the things that needs to be circumvented. That's one of the things that it took forever to circumvent because the arbiters of truth out there, they weren't filtering the correct information about a trial that Dan Wooten, he took a side on. He and so many others, they decided they were going to create the truth on. And in this, they create the truth as well, you know. So there have been other those small outlets. They say things like this. Sunburn set on another great scoop. The Sun have been having a hell of a time trying to retrofit a public interest in their Hugh Edwards story, pulling up any old incident of workplace misconduct they can find to pin on him now that the police are saying there's no evidence of any crime. And it's a shame they put themselves in this position because if all they wanted was a story about a news broadcaster who has made life uncomfortable for colleagues by sending them quote unquote inappropriate messages, they have a really juicy one much closer to home. It will involve asking some difficult questions, but they have an excellent starting lead. they should still have all of Dan Wooten's old HR files stashed away somewhere. So maybe they could start there. There's bullying accusations, there's NDAs, even a few payoffs they could get the guys in finance to dredge back up. While they're doing that, they could look into why Wooten keeps getting promoted while some of those who lodged complaints got sidelined. And like I said the other day, with that type of allegation, if that is indeed transpiring, if you have people getting sidelined because they make allegations against somebody, if their careers end, and that happens, by the way, they get put into dead end positions because they're perceived as non-team players. And again, the allegations were that he was going after younger people that worked for him, so they would already be in positions that are low on the totem anyhow. Yeah, that's a real problem if that ends up being made manifest. But former colleagues seem perfectly willing to chat. But hey, we shouldn't be doing their job for them. Just start pulling at the thread, see what you find. And I would say if I don't do interviews, not usually. But if any former colleagues of Mr. Wooten would like to talk about what's there in their own words, they want to drop that veil of privacy, actually discuss what they saw firsthand. Because again, Dan Wooten is okay with that. He has made that clear again and again. Come on. And if you don't like this channel for some reason, well, we can find you another channel, another place that you would probably be more comfortable with. But with Danny Boy, like I said, he's made it clear that he wants those voices to be heard and respected. So I just feel like we would be following up on his wishes. What's up, Steph? Thank you for that gifted membership, by the way. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. But I mean, again, there's a lot more to even now. So we're talking about this has been going on for days. And one of the reasons this is going on and it gets louder and louder is because it is being met with silence. There's a lot. There's a lot of ideas. Okay, so here have been some of the allegations that's been pointed out. Here's a list that was put up by someone else. They said, now we know why Dan Wooten defended AH. Not because he was an advocate for her, but because he is exactly like her. The allegations here are that he stalked and silenced an ex. This, again, I don't know if it has everything included there, but he abused a highly vulnerable person to the point of self-harm, JD, or ending themselves, Carolyn Flack. He's a predator that includes drugging, queer baiting, and entrapment. You secretly recorded tapes as blackmail material. That would be his DW colleagues, AH, and Elon Musk elite parties with billionaires. Oh, that's a crazy allegation to have on there, too. Bullied employees, posed for fake photos for clout, published defamatory articles. He's highly litigious, and he's protected by the mainstream. And, there is a lot of, they added in a lot of stuff with that, too. You had the alleged parties. There's a lot of screenshots for that. There's a lot of other screenshots that have been added, for him posing for clout, showing like, hey, here's what the posing for clout actually, when you compare the two. And there's so much else. I mean, you can see, again, there are a lot of similarities, and there are too, There are too. And as it's been noted, Dan Wooten never let the truth get in the way of the story he was wanting to tell. Ever. When you look at that, again, one of the people he quoted for his article, his article where he's trying to end somebody's career, they actually made a statement on that. And they said, that's actually not what I said at all. They added, I don't stand behind hitting people or abusing people. It seemed that AH got hurt. As someone who has been the victim of that type of abuse and a supporter of Me Too, telling my story to help others, I cannot advocate violence. I think it is a confusing message to put people in roles that are aimed at children, young people, if there's a suggestion that they have done something of that nature. When I read the article, I realized that I had been completely misquoted and misused by the Sun to accomplish their goal. In my brief interview, I'd actually said many of the opposite things that the Sun had falsely quoted me as saying. So, again, I mean, you've had people come out and say he not only took stories, again, just allegations, and threw them out as ammunition. But more than that, he took other people's statements, people that he quoted in that, trying to weaponize them because they were they were very vocal, because they were known. They had their own tale, stuff that they say that they had gone through, they had put out to the world. When Wooten ended up talking to them, misquote. That's one of the reasons I don't talk to the media, because I don't trust them. There are a few journalists that I would trust, but there's not there's not a lot. There is not a lot at all. But it shows you again the double standard in this. If there's any standard, there is a double standard. I hate to say that these folks they have standards at all, but remember too, as somebody said, as Dr. Dr. Charlotte Proudman themselves said about allegations when it comes to that, straight up, when a complainant alleges ARP, DA, or coercive control, the accused should not be permitted to seek. This is what she wants, by the way, in the courtroom. I've said this before. This is crazy. Just think, this is a person in courtrooms advocating for courtroom changes. They should not be able to file a complaint that they lied about this. This approach is discouraging complainants from making allegations of abuse, leaving children at risk of irreparable harm. So again, 10 key changes to victims bill. So Dan Wooten, man, let's just apply that to people like old Danny Boy. Because again, these are the same people. These are the people he threw in with. He's 100%. When he says he's not a proponent of that culture, he threw in with it. He was part of it. He was right there in the front of it. And let's stop pretending otherwise. And Dan, he needs to stop pretending too. And there are a lot more, and I do mean a lot more things that have come up about Dan Wooten. And it's crazy. It's crazy also when you look back to his connections, not just in the mainstream, but also his alleged connections in the courtroom. I mean, again, there's just crazy stuff that I said it all come out in the wash. But it's so much madness. All right. Now there's one other thing I want to cover today too. And I want to discuss that thing with Disney too. Naomi, thanks for 10. They promoted Wooten to the point where he influenced JD right out of a movie, Revolting. Again, yeah, he was one of the front and center names that spearheaded this attack. He was the spearhead for it. Now I want to mention two things. I want to talk about first of all, I found this to be interesting. So I want to, people have been talking about the writer and actor strike. Some of that coming up with questions with JD, everything that had been going on. And there was a quote from Bob Iger I thought it was really interesting. Bob Iger was talking about how the writer and actors strikes, they were very disturbing. They have a very, very damaging effect on business. Now, this is a guy, by the way, that is first of all, there is a lot of damage going on. Companies like Disney, they're hurting quite a bit. But you know what? There are key names that are involved in that. People like Bob Iger. People have made decisions. People that, again, they back things like we just talked about and other terrible decisions too. All the while, people like Bob Iger, they get paid. They get paid very well. In fact, Bob Iger, he pulls down around a base salary of $1 million, but his incentives right now, he had to take a pay cut on it. He's only getting around $25 million in incentives. That doesn't count stock incentives either, just to say. But these are the same folks, again. Oh, those people, they shouldn't want more money. But Bob Iger, man, I mean, he's bringing down $45.9 million in 2021 when people are being laid off by drugs. He pulled in $21 million in 2020. And again, when you look at these numbers, don't you find that interesting? And when you look at what they were creating, okay, we've seen some of their creations. Now, this, I would really like some I would really like to know whether or not these pictures are true. All right, because there's problems with this. But the Daily Mail, who we just talked about, by the way, they put out pictures of the new. This is supposed to be the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs from Disney. Now, again, there's some questions about it because that doesn't look like the right actress to me. But if we're going by what they're saying, look at this. I mean, if this was actually that movie, come on. I realize you can go in, you can CGI that up and everything else. Forget the headline. This is their headline. So I posted that along with that picture just to say this is where it's sourced from. But I mean, this is why you would have problems because you take a story and you don't do anything. I mean, look at it. It looks horrible. If this is somebody's smaller budget movie or if this is a theater troupe or something, have at it. Like I said, I don't want to mock anybody in it or anything like that. That is not my goal for it. My goal in this is to say, if this is going to be what is going, 100, $200 million outing, that wouldn't be the way to go. You've seen a lot of that. Again, we have over a $1 billion that have been invested in these companies. This right here, that is a way that you lose money. That is a way that you lose money hand over fist. And they have lost quite a bit of money with that too. Now, there's one other thing that I think deserves to be called out. In fact, I decided I wanted to ratio somebody for this today. So there was give me this here. So I've seen this happening again and again too. And this just shows you how nasty some of the people that we deal with and these subjects are, those AH supporters. So you have the young lady here that is featured with Hollywood vampires. She's taking her pictures, she's having the time of her life. What I've seen on threads that are pointing this out is these same people that supposedly they support women. They're supposed to be in there, I mean, this is a person that is having something they wanted forever. I mean, they're so excited about it. I feel good for them. It's a positive story. And they're in there, they just see them as disabled. Oh, posing with a disabled person. Probably, I'm a good guy, PR. They go in, they attack her. They minimize her to the point that all she is a disabled. That's all they see there. And I think that's a very telling statement. If you're on Twitter and you missed this post, go find it, go in there, and again, maybe ratio it. That's I thought it was funny because I was, they posted this. And what's really telling too is if you look through this, it is a who's who of those AH backers. That's all it is. Are they back going after? I'm like, you're discussing, prepare for that repost ratio. Bam, look at that ratio, baby. But it is gross. It's gross that they've been tarred. It's the same thing that they did for a very brave young boy at one time. They got so much blowback for it that they stopped doing that under their own accounts. I won't say that they don't do it under sock accounts, but they did. That was a horrible thing. They did it for a long time. They even went after the channel and stuff. I still firmly believe that's what happened. And I mean, they do it again and again. It's nasty. It's nasty when you can't set that aside for a hot minute and say, yo, let this person Let them have that moment. Let their family was posting this. They were putting up positives about it. And you have these crazy cultists, and that's what they act like. They act like a bunch of cultists going in and attacking on the family threads. I also saw this. I thought, okay, so I didn't realize. So the did you hear anything about another big Hollywood name, by the way? Oprah's spiritual healer. The person that she brought on all the time for that. Apparently, and this is supposedly fact checked too. This was in articles. They were sentenced to 99 years for let's just say going after and doing terrible things to young girls, and they were accused of baby trafficking as well. Big influential Hollywood names. So this stuff does exist. It's just making sure you point it in the right place. I don't know if anybody heard anything about that. That's crazy, though. I didn't. I saw a post about it. John, thanks for 5. According to rumors by Sparrow and Doomcock, Kennedy is out at Lucasfilm, potentially money mishandling on a criminal level. I would think if anything was going to take out Kathleen Kennedy is a very big problem at Disney. And I loved how, for the longest time, if you criticize Kathleen Kennedy, you criticize the narrative. The narrative, see, these folks, they take away the escapism route. This is the problem with most of these executives that tried to buy into this insanity that's been happening socially. They'll see it and they'll think it's a marketing tool. So they'll go in publicly. They'll make statements that take away the escapism. Kathleen Kennedy, very guilty of that. Meanwhile, they bring in the soulless Disney Corporation. They destroy huge franchises, big franchises, established things like Star Wars. That's a big one. Indiana Jones, that was big. Even the pirate stuff. Look what they did. They go out at every turn, and whether it's an executive like Kennedy or whether it's Kennedy herself, they drove this company into the ground. They thought they were too big to fail. The beer bug came along. It did damage, and they've done damage to themselves to the point that the nostalgia bait. Ooh, look at Mickey. Come and visit. It doesn't work that well anymore. And Kathleen Kennedy, her problem was that she was Indiana Jones. She is, that was her claim to fame. Her connection there. Her proximity. And that proximity, she still managed to drive that franchise underground. Heather, thanks for the 2 there. There are cases where I support prison justice. There are cases where I hear something and I think, my God, I cannot believe that. Not only is that, I mean, there are true monsters out there. We know they are. We know they exist. The problem is that knowledge is misused. Oh, we got a little one coming, so I'm going to drop that conversation for a minute. Hey, what's up, kiddo?
And I saw her not open. I try to open the door.
Sissy, oh, you want me to open this cheese stick? You want to open this cheese stick for a second? Okay. Hey, just a second. I'm live, kiddos. Don't go crazy on each other. What the heck?
Audio hasn't been helping me clean at all.
Hey, are you supposed to be cleaning? Here's your cheese stick.
And
it broke. Here it is. Here's the other piece of it. You want that
for
a
have
snap?
A break?
Can you have a break cleaning? Yeah, y'all can play for a few minutes if y'all want to. Y'all can play a video game together. Would you like to do that? Would you like to play a video game?
Rainbow Friends.
Will you want to play a video game?
We could play Rainbow Friends.
Rainbow Friends. You like Rainbow Friends? You do. You want to go play Rainbow Friends?
I can't find my troller.
Well, Sissy will help you find your troller. Sissy's helpful.
No,
like
you don't need a troller to play Rainbow Friends.
Actually, you get your iPad and you put it together with Sissy. She calls her tablet an iPad. You get your iPad and you put it together with Sissy's iPad, and then you'll have a troller too. Now, folks are saying hi to you all, by the way.
Anyway,
give you
I
all
got
love.
a diary. I ain't telling you what's in here though.
Oh, that's okay. I'll. Oh man, you put a lock on it. No fair. Hey, take this one with you too. This is yours, but she'll take it up and open it when you finish the others. All right, go. Love you, kiddos. Love y'all.
Also, you guys, here's a virtual grilled cheese that's burned.
Virtual grilled cheese.
That's burned for
That's
all the
burned.
haters.
Oh, it's burned for the haters. Okay.
And for all our fans, here are some cupcakes with cookies.
Ooh, cupcakes and cookies for the fans and supporters.
And cake.
That sounds good. All right, love you, kiddos.
And a salad, so that was
That's hilarious. They're like, oh man, would have locked the door, and they were like, "You locked me out. I can't stand it." Oh hey, you got 5 minutes. She said, "Hey, sending my toddler boy and twins to your house. I need a break to candy fund." Indeed. Oh Lord. Well, they were supposed to be cleaning. They decided within 2 hours to trash their rooms combined. So that's why I was late going to this. That's why she was asking for a break, because I was like, hey, we went through and we cleaned the heck out of y'all's rooms, and within 2 hours you all turned them into a disaster area. So they're like, can we play some video games or something, Dad? It's so grueling. Like I said, you heard her talking about grilled cheese. So my oldest daughter, she's 9. She's again with other people watching, make sure there's no problem. She's been trying out cooking. It's been something that she enjoys. She likes to make stuff. She loves creating things. She loves activity sets, and she wants to be able to cook stuff. So she was making grilled cheese. All right. Well, she ended up crisping one, and I was like, that's a little crispy. Nobody's really gonna want to eat that one. Maybe make another one. It's okay. You're a little you're a little out of practice with that. And she was like, Sissy will eat it. The 3-year-old, because she will eat. She's picky. It depends. If it's related to cheese though, she would probably eat it. So I was sitting down here getting my live stream ready, and down the steps came tumbling first a grilled cheese, dum 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 dum, right down the steps, and then a plate. It had been dropped. It wasn't thrown, but it had been dropped. And then the little one comes. Now she doesn't run down the steps. She scoots her butt down them. She slides down so she won't fall. Do 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 do. And she came down, and she was. I was like, "What's wrong? What's this there?" And she ran over. And she said, "Dad, this grilled cheese is old as shit." I was like, what did you say? What? Now, of course, with a little kid, they pick up words. I was like, oh my God, you only keep saying that ever. I was like, where did you hear that? But that was funny too. I was like, oh my God. She thought it was old, not that it was burned. She thought she'd been given old food. She was coming to complain and ended up dropping it down the steps. But the little one's gotten to the point where, she she has a sister. So her sister, she blames her for everything. She'd be like, Sissy. I was telling her, I went upstairs and looked at her room, and it was trashed. I was like, what in the heck happened? She's like, Sissy did it. Sissy. I was like, Sissy didn't trash your room. One night, so the other night, here's a funny story. The other night, little one, I heard her come downstairs. Like I heard her, and I heard her take back upstairs. I was like, what the heck? So I went, and when I walked upstairs, I looked around to see if she gotten into anything, first. And then I went up to where her room was. And when I was looking at her, I noticed something on her legs. I was like, what in the heck is on your legs? It looked like a stuffing, like stuffed animal stuffing. I was like, did you rip up a stuffed animal? I mean, what have you done? Well, I kept looking at it, and it was some stuffing. I never figured out what it was from, by the way. But the reason it was stuck to her legs is because she had found a marshmallow, and she was squashing it with her feet for some reason, and it got on her legs. I was like, oh my gosh. She is She's hilarious and goofy, but man, she would get into anything. When she had marshmallow on her feet and legs, I was like, "How is this happening?" Uh, they're funny. But the oldest one, I mean, they're good kids. They do crazy stuff sometimes, but they're good kids. They're just kids. But anyway, they love to come around to the microphone. They love the idea of people just being there. They like having an audience. So, and they've grown up around the microphone. It's an interesting world that we're building, where kids, when I was younger, kids wanted to be, whatever. They wanted to be a doctor, or they used to want to be they used to want to be astronauts until, well, that unfortunate incident with what was it, the Challenger blowing up? Then yeah, not so much. But nowadays, they want to be like on YouTube and stuff. It's such a strange world. My kids too. Yeah, tell them, hey, yeah, dad, and day job goes out and helps people in mental health. Pfft, who cares about that, man? You got that microphone though. They want to be involved in that. It's such a weird world. But anyway, there was one other. So there's another thing that I've been looking at too. Now I'm just now starting to look at this because I was curious about where this was going, with all the stuff that's been happening. But I don't know if any of you have kept up with the accusations against, here, let me pull up this. Let me see. Oh, is it Mariah Mills? She went after Zion Williamson, calling him some horrible things, and she's been making posts. See, this is one of the things that's crazy, how much damage you could potentially do just with allegations by themselves. So she actually posted this. I saw this rolling through my timeline with her putting together a video talking about it, saying, no one deserves any of this. She's tagging in the NBA, of course, tagging in his job, saying that he's been doing horrible things to me since 2022. He's paying me off, and people are like, what the heck? She's like, I'm not staying silent anymore. And people are saying, well, she hasn't been silent for a long time. She's been making crazy accusations. And this happens all the time, all the time, every single day. There is somebody new that is being accused of something particularly heinous. And what's fascinating about this to me, okay, that story there, comparing that to the Dan Wooten story, right? So this story here, if you look it up, like you're curious about what's happening with it, okay, I type in an accused. Look how many articles are written on this. This doesn't have anywhere the traction currently that you saw on Twitter with Dan Wooten, but the Dan Wooten stuff was just ghosted. It was a ghost town with accusations, while you have every outlet in its mama. I mean, you're talking about some large outlets too. Like, I mean, you're talking about any of them getting in that. And isn't it amazing? I mean, again, the face of that. Because again, who's being accused? They pick and choose. They pick and choose the fights they want. And it's not like like for myself, I cover what I want to cover because I'm one person. I can only cover so much. But not them. They'll cover anything whatsoever, except things that land close to home. Anyway, I thought this stuff was interesting to talk about, though. I'd like to see where all the Dan Wooten stuff it ends up. I'm curious about if this story. I don't actually see outlets doing anything unless they're forced to bring this up. And considering they control the narrative out there. Again, this is the same thing they did with the Depp trial. They just go in and they pretend none of this is happening at all. And if you pretend hard enough, maybe, just maybe, you can either sculpt the social narrative or you can make it all go away. I mean, they were trying. They were definitely trying. But anyway. Oh, man, crazy stuff. I also saw, just to note this too. So there's been a lot of discussion as of late about the things that have been going on with Twitter. Twitter monetizing only political shills, which has actually been a big thing, by the way, lately. They've only, they have their monetization of, and also permabans, permabans for the most ridiculous things. Remember, the whole idea was that people would not get permabans anymore. They weren't going to get that. But yeah, people are being banned at the same numbers or worse numbers than under previous administration under the new control of Twitter. Meanwhile, so as part of Twitter Blue is the $8 paid thing. You're supposed to be able to go in, monetize, and after monetization, ad revenue if you meet certain criteria levels. Like if you have 3 million impressions, you're supposed to be part of ad revenue sharing. Well, it turns out that the majority of people who are applying for this are not being approved. What I mean is they're not even being reviewed for monetization. You have just an overwhelming number of people saying nobody will even review this, and it's sitting for months, years more. Well, if they are, I saw this come up, and I thought this was interesting because it's false advertisement. It was never noted as well, this will be something that's introduced over time. But so places that have been monetized, you have the meme channels. So the biggest places out there, the ones that give probably the most traffic to Twitter, are either the most divisive with politics, or they're the meme channels. Places like, say, I Hypocrite. They make fun of things. Well, the ones that make fun of things, they're not being they weren't included in ad support. This was just a flagrant lie. It was a flagrant lie promoted to so many people. And you see proof of that. You have Twitter support actually saying, yeah, that's the case. Heather, by the way, thanks for too. Hope it ends up in prison. Indeed. See from that too. Yep. Hey, what's up, Snake Plushkin? Thanks for the 5. Woke is simply another word for evil. Well, it's one of those misappropriated words. Okay, so woke is just like social justice or anything else. At one time, it did have a meaning. It had a meaning that had not been hijacked. You had what you do, just like social movements or anything else. You'll have people that will come in, they will try to co-opt a word because it has some kind of powerful social connotation. And when they do, they turn it into something nasty, because then they can go back to its originating point and they can say, well, this is what that word actually means. Are you telling me you oppose? And whatever it is, enter whatever thing they're trying to hijack. It's the same thing they do with social movements like Me Too or anything else. It's just nasty business. So yeah, when you see words like, well, it's people making fun of the folks that have, they've commandeered those words. I think it's funny too, like the blowback. I think the blowback, if anybody has a problem with that, they should give blowback to the people that tried to co-opt that stuff, tried to steal it from its original purpose or intent. But yeah, here's the so this place again, huge as far as the traffic is concerned. Again, this post alone had 1.6 million views or on that. So the 1.6, they have to have 3 million impressions for X amount of months. Like me, I can't even get to the monetization part. I've applied and they won't even look at it, which is like kind of a joke. You have all these political shills though, and they are primarily, overwhelmingly, they are political shills. Some of the most divisive people in the entire world. But that's where Twitter is now. They're being paid for those efforts. Meanwhile, again, you have places like iHypocrite. And they wrote and they were like, hey, what's going on? Like, I didn't get any money. I meet all the metrics. And they were told, well, thanks for reaching out about you unable to receive payment for creator ad revenue sharing. Currently, creator ad revenue sharing is only available to a selected group of people. Now, that's not how it was advertised. Convincing people to spend that money. I use here's the crazy thing with Twitter right now. If you don't pick up as a business, if you don't pick up that little bit of Twitter blue, you get throttled for it. So a lot of places do that, but as part of it, it's supposed to come with different things. There's supposed to be incentives, and those incentives, they're lies, just like the lie of people getting banned, freedom of speech. Remember, at first it was, well, you have freedom of speech. Then it was, you have freedom of speech, but not freedom of reach, meaning they shadow ban. Then they started banning people, which we talked about heavily for things like Eliza Blue. Hey, you question the wrong people out there, you could just get banned outright. You could get permaban for it, not a removal of a post, but you could get permaban for it. And the permabans, they just keep coming in. So you have the free speech thing doesn't exist. The idea that this is a transparent outlet as far as political. I mean, one of the names that was talking about their payouts, one of the big political heads out there, is a paid political pundit, paid behind the scenes by a political party to gaslight people. They were paid quite a bit of money by a political party to do that. And they're being rewarded for those efforts. Isn't that amazing? Again, just shows you all of the bullshit. I like to. There are a lot of people who, well, maybe it's better under. It's the same. It's the same thing. Nothing changed. Only it serves a different type of ego. Oh, it kills me. Heather, thanks 5. I think the political tweeters get the most attention because of all the division. Yeah, it is. It's actually. Oh yeah, I take it the blue band are still banned. Oh yeah. So you can pay $8 a month and still get your ass banned for nothing. So you get to pay for the privilege of being banned too, and that it's just absurdity. I find, like I said, I find it fascinating that people will tell you over and over again things have gotten better because people want that. Again, they want to believe that they'll get better. They want to have a place where you can congregate, you can discuss, argue, and that's fine. And if all things were equal, that'd be all right, you know. But again, the most divisive topic in the damn world, politics. It is rewarded for the divisiveness. And again, there's some huge names out there that also get picked because they're handpicked, everybody. But places like that, again, like iHypocrite, they blow away those metrics. They lead a lot of people to that platform, and they're cut out of it because none of these meme channels, they get nada. Over time, the reason I mention that too is because people will buy into the idea that you go on Twitter and that you can when you're posting, you can make money. I mean, that was the idea that was being promoted. You had these people that were posting about it saying, oh yeah, look at how much money I made for doing it. But you'll notice like here. Okay. So you have, again, okay, here's a politically divisive talking head. They're like, "Oh, man, Twitter almost paid me $25,000 for doing that." And that's basically saying, "Oh, you could do that too, baby. You could do that too." And the reality is, probably not. You probably can't. You can meet every metric and everything. It's just unreal. It's so nasty. It's a lie. Again, those type of lies are some of the nastiest lies. And I don't see the difference between what they do, lying to the public, and about the things that with the Twitter leaks, that you saw about prior administration. All of that was supposed to be, it's not just about backroom deals, which is bad by itself, but it's about the lies. It's supposed to be transparency, and there is no transparency. There was supposed to be an equality. Remember when Twitter Blue was discussed? The reason that Twitter Blue was supposed to be there, it was supposed to even the playing field. Everybody is now created evenly. There is no more paying $15,000 behind the scene for verification. You're in it. Everybody gets reset to zero. Well, that's not true. Some people are more equal than others. And of course, you knew that was going to happen, but there are so many people that insist that that is not reality, and it blows me away sometimes. It blows me away to see again that's not hate toward anybody for that either. People want it to be real, but wanting something to be real doesn't make it real. Hmm. But I always like the idea that that platform would be free speech anyhow. It's like, no, look at the organizations that um, get a lot of financial support. The ones that they don't believe in free speech, they believe in their speech. They believe in co-opting the narrative of free speech while shutting down speech that they don't like. They promote the idea of hate speech, which again, they decide what is hate speech. There's some nasty stuff out there too. Make no mistake. I do not deny that in any way. But, some of the most racist, most disgusting platforms, platforms that attack people because of color, ethnicity. They go after Jewish people. They go after black people. They go after white people. I mean, for whatever, they go after people for religion, whether that be being Islamic, being Christian, whatever. That stuff stands. It's okay. But man, you question somebody like that was say close to the that was close to the leadership of Twitter. Oh, you got banned through all of that. The bans keep coming. You remember we were told that this stuff would get better because it was, there's always the narrative of rogue employees. Well, must got rid of X, Y, or Z because that person was a rogue employee. The person that was over Twitter trust and safety, that person was a bad person. Still happening because ultimately, sooner or later, like that either is the platform or it isn't. And it seems like it overwhelmingly is. But anyway, that is there is something. So tomorrow, if we live stream, and I think we should, would you like to laugh at Elon Musk tearing into Taylor Lorenz? Because oh my God, he just, he really tore into her, and it was funny. Taylor Lorenz, I mean, again, it's funny watching people like Lorenz try to go out, try to attack, and just get taken to task for it. Had a lot of fun watching that happen. What's up, Heather? Thanks for the 5. Are we going to see the Tug Life picture become available merch? It's by far my favorite. Oh, the album cover? You talking about the yeah, it should. So Ray, I'd have to get him to help on it, and Ray is away for a hot minute. He noted that in a live stream. He'd be away for some stuff. So when he gets back, I'll talk to him with that, and we'll see exactly how we can set that up. But yeah, I like that. That's actually what's funny is it has a front and a back cover too. Somebody made like a fake album And that's what that came from. And I always liked it. I thought it was funny. There's one of the I appreciate. So there's been this argument. Here's something else that I thought was an interesting discussion. Because I want to see what you think about it. Okay, and this will be the last thing that we talk about for sure. There was an argument coming up about uh, a fan art picture. Okay, so somebody put in this attaches to. Give me 1 second. This attaches to Eric July. He has this is nothing negative toward Eric. In fact, the opposite. Eric has done quite a bit. He's done quite a bit for artists and everything else. It's great stuff. Well, this person, they put in this piece of fan art. They said, "Oh, look at my fan art here." And at first glance, a lot of people are like, "Wow, that's amazing." Here's the only problem. This is created by AI. And you could tell it's AI when you start looking at specific features. Like I pointed out here, if you look at the hands, you'll notice something. It has 2 thumbs. That's one of the problems AI has. They mess up ears, they add extra fingers, or they remove half a finger. It's something that AI messes up. It's a blunder over and over again. And that's not expressed here. In fact, the person that put it together, it looks like they denied that it was AI. And then after a while, they admitted, well, it's AI to a degree. But I mean, when you look at that, do you think it's fair for artists to end up competing with just, I mean, something that again is just kicking out a picture? You put in a few words of code and bam. Because I mean, with an artist, if you look at what artist creation, it takes them quite a bit of time. Time is money versus, a few lines of codes and poof, you have this come out. And again, it's flawed. You'll find flaws all through it. The flaws always, when we've seen this a lot too. We've seen virtual women creative. We've had that with scams, people like simping for, giving money to not real women, thinking that they were part of that girlfriend experience. We've seen the use of AI, overwhelmingly added to other stuff. And again, you can see the issues. 2 thumbs. 2 thumbs, it looks like here. So I was curious, what do people think about that? I personally, my issue here is I know a lot of artists. Like this is my answer to it. No, I don't think it's fair. Why? Because the artists I know, these are people that they eke out a very meager living oftentimes. There is a percentage that is at the top that makes quite a bit of money, but under that, you have a lot of people that just barely get by. Very talented people, and they're being replaced by something once their talent is gone. You have innovations by talent over time. People that revolutionize artwork. Of course, you have garbage, like some of the modern art stuff that comes out is absolute garbage. For everything that comes out like that, you have, I mean, truly inspiring people. Again, like Hellboy, for example. You look at Mike Mignola, the guy who that's his creation. He popularized this specific design. His use of shadowing, of the way. Let me bring this up. Mike Mignola. His stuff, it absolutely it was actually shouted down for the longest time too. But after a while, this style, his style became embraced enough that are people who use that or emulate that style. Here, let me show you. Here's a good example. All right, here is a black and white of my Mignola piece. You see all the negative space, how it's set up, but it contributes to it. it creates quite a profound effect over time. And there are people that, again, there was a lot of blowback to his style for the longest time. But it not only became accepted, it became, something that people really appreciate. I like it. I love the way that it works. Again, all of that space here. You can see that same type of style, how it's utilized here. So check this out. And again, AI is not going to, it's not really going to innovate. It's not going to move things forward. And when you look at those Mignola designs, I love some of those. Check that out. We'd be just stuck in mud, and again, people end up, they do. A lot of people end up like eking out a very minimalized existence there. But anyway, what's up, Heather? Thanks for two. It's a cheap, but better than DC and Marvel now. Yeah, I think honestly, a lot of the DC and Marvel stuff, they have some very they go in. Here's the problem. And this is why a lot of those companies will switch over to AI. It's because they don't want to pay anybody. They don't want to pay them anything, like nothing at all. They can go in and pick up a AI and they don't have to pay them at all. And we're not talking about independence here. We're talking about people that it's kind of like when the guy who created the Winter Soldier, when you had that Captain America movie come out, it makes over $1 billion. What did what happened for the guy who created it? He was invited to a celebration and they decided to cut him a check. They gave him 5,000 whole dollars for helping them make $1 billion. They were like, "Yeah, thanks for your creation here." And he was like, I don't want that. That's a bunch of garbage. That's ridiculous. But it just shows you if they could cut out that person. But the problem is they're not going to create anything cool with that either. Mark, thanks for the 5. I have a problem with Photoshop artists being compared to artists. I have experience in both forms. Pencil and paper skill cannot be beaten. Yeah, I like the mixed medium, actually. I like some of the the digital artists. Digital art nowadays, man, you can create some amazing stuff, just from setting down. But what I like also is having an original piece or a composition. There's nothing like seeing that original piece of artwork, something that has been submitted. And I hate losing that. When everything's created mechanically, there's just not that one profound piece that exists. With stuff art like S.K. Bennett created, for example. He's made pieces that I've got a few of them that are just absolutely amazing. And years from now, hope like my daughters love them, but years from now, they'll be able to have those and be able to be motivated, and see, see different things in them. And that's something that stands the test of time versus just a digital imprint. And again, nothing against digital artistry. That's amazing. People create amazing stuff with that too. But there's just it's such an amazing thing to hold an original piece of artwork in your hand, something that it's not been ran off. It's not a Xerox copy of it. It's the original thing someone created. It's just, like I said, it's absolutely amazing. You see the process, everything. If you want to really feel that, one of my favorite books that I don't think it gets enough love. It gets love like even in higher education now, but still a lot of people never heard of it. Charles Burns, the artist, he created a book called Black Hole. Black Hole, it was pretty socially aware. It was about teenagers. They're going out, they're just they're living their normal lives, but there's something terrible that's happening. There's a disease being transmitted. And this disease, it's a social commentary, but this disease, it transforms people. It makes them somewhat hideous on the outside. They'll have defects like, something else that'll come up on them. There was a guy, there's one scene in there that just really sticks with me. There's a guy at a party. He ends up having, we'll say, relations with this other girl at the party. They go out. They're making out, and then she looks at his neck, and she notices, his face, but on the middle of his neck, because he has this disease, he has a little mouth on his neck there, and the mouth opens like it's trying to speak, and it's just a horrific idea. But again, it's social commentary on the things that were happening there. People dealing with AIDS, the AIDS epidemic, and it's hidden behind this horror tale. If you've never checked it out, Black Hole, Charles Burns, amazing stuff. I love Charles Burns. Like, I love his stuff. He tells some amazing stories. But anyway, all right. Well, I'm going to end here. I think we've talked about just random crap for a minute. So I don't know. I always like live streams for that. But I will catch you all later. I'm going to end here. I watch Flashcast tonight. Flashcast on Yellow Flash 2's channel. If you're up, catch it. It should be fun. All right. But anyway, I'm going to end here. Also, Fallen Hero, thanks for the 3. Bye. Yeah, bye. I'm leaving too. So see ya. Appreciate y'all. See you soon.